Faithfully Book. My name is Busse, and here is my guest,
Sayo.
So I sent out a form earlier on, and a bunch of you sent in questions concerning everything books, reading, and faithfully booked. So we'll be answering those questions or these questions in this video. So let's get right into it. This video is for the first year anniversary of the YouTube channel. Thank you for riding with us. Thank you for watching, subscribing, sharing, liking, commenting, everything good. Thanks. We having a few questions and we'll be answering them jointly. Some will be just for me, or some will be directed towards both of us. First question we're going to be answering is from Grace. So Grace is asking, the question is, do you actually enjoy reading, or do you read because you know it's a good thing?
I think it's both for me. There are certain genres that I actually enjoy reading, like fiction. I enjoy fiction so much, and I don't read fiction because like I have to read it. I read it because I want to. But then there are certain genres like some self-help books or productivity or leadership that are not so interesting, right? But I read them because, okay, like I can learn from this person. And I know that if I read this book, I will become better, right? A better thinker, a better person. So it's a mix for me. Like there are books that I read because I want to, then there are books that I read because I should or I have to. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. So yeah, I think the same thing for me. I enjoy reading, and like you already said, it's a mix.
Yeah.
I read because I enjoy reading them, like fiction. I don't necessarily need like any motivation, like, oh, this is going to help me. I enjoy reading fiction and even some self-help books. I also enjoy reading them. So it's a mix of both of them for me. Next question from Sanusi Ne. I'm not sure who that is, but thank you for sending in your question. The first question that the person asked is where to get books at an affordable price.
I'm a bookstore, I guess.
Okay.
And I think there's some Instagram, outlets that you can also check. For example, the 1K bookstore. I don't think all their books are 1K, but they are like affordable.
Are any of their books 1K?
I don't know. I don't think so. Instagram is my go-to. And then you can also check out thrift bookstores, online and offline. Like there are books that people have read, they now sell again. The markets too. Like if you go to those big markets, where I buy my books, I get my books from Roving Heights. I won't say they are like very, very, very affordable, but that's where I get my books from. So
I get majority of my books at an affordable price at Godly Brains from Godly Brains Ministries.
Yeah.
So if you would like to get their contact, just let me know in the comment section so I can just link you up or something like that. And I've gotten books or a book from Commanding Liberty as well. Their books are also affordable. And there are some bookstores around. Just enter or any supermarkets really. That's where I get majority of my books, apart from Commanding Liberty, Godly Brains Ministries, or Godly Brains Bookshop.
There's a place in Ventura that I get books as well. It's like a store. I don't remember the name, but it's in Ventura. If you stay in Ibadan, that is like their books are like 3,000 thereabouts. So that's one as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what are people watching from India?
Go to your local.
Okay. So just check your bookstores, right? Check your bookstores. But if you'd like to get the contact of Commanding Liberty Bookstore and Godly Brains, let me know in the comment section and I'll link you. Person's email is ayblessing13. Shout out to ayblessing13. Alright, so the first question she asked is, how are you doing? How are you?
Oh, that's for me. I'm okay. I'm glad to be here.
Of course you are.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm also doing very well. Thank you for asking. We're doing great. We're doing great. And another person also asked the same question, how are you doing? So that's from Rachel. I'm doing very, very good. Very well. I'm doing well. I'm doing great. Hi Rachel. Thank you for sending your questions. Let's go to AY Blessing's next question. She said, when you get into reading slumps, if you've gotten any, how do you get out? Okay, so I'll go first. Reading slumps. I don't think I'm I don't think I really get into reading slumps like that. I don't think I do. Because I don't think I do. I think you should actually go first because this reading slumps question really... But I don't really get into reading slumps. So maybe I'm not very conscious of it. I think maybe it's more of I'm not really conscious of it. And I also take a lot of breaks from reading. So I don't really, and I'm not really under the pressure to like, read. I think those things help me, but we're going to be focusing more on how do you get out? You've gotten into reading slumps. And another person also asked this question. Kieran also wants to know how to get out of a reading slump. So please go ahead.
What's a reading slump, first of all? I have an idea, but I'm not entirely sure.
Okay. I think for me, how I identify a reading slump is when it's just really hard to get into the book.
Okay.
It's just you're not really feeling, you're not feeling the book. It's hard. You try different books and that sort of thing, like inertia.
So it's not one particular book. It's like
lethargy,
just
probably.
reading, like lethargy, like you
Probably.
said. Okay. So I think I'll say that I get the reading slump thing. Like now that I understand it, I don't want to say that I'm the queen of reading slumps, but like I get into a lot of reading slumps. For example, January this year, like I did not really read. Like I had books everywhere, books on my table, books by my bedside, books on my laptop, but I didn't read so much. I think one book that I remember reading was Holier Than Thou by Jackie Hill Perry. That was the book that I even managed to read. But in February this year, I have read nothing less than 10 books, right? And how did I get out of that reading slump? I think it just happened one day when I found a book. There was this book, it was a fiction book, Neighbor Favor. And I read it, and I remembered how much I loved reading fiction. I was like, oh my god, this is why I read. Like, I read for the fun of it, not just because, I have to read. I think when you put that pressure on yourself, like, I have to read books. I have to read. Like, I've not read this year. Oh my god, I want to read 50 books this year, and I'm still on book number 3. Like, when that pressure keeps mounting, it's really hard for me to go to reading. But when I remember that, oh my god, I read because I love books, I enjoy reading, like that joy of reading. When I read that Neighbor Favor, I read it in one sitting. It was about 200, 300 something pages. So I read it at once, and from there I started reading. I read more fiction books. I started reading my books on health. I just was in a reading, the opposite of slump. Yeah, reading frenzy. So how I got out of the slump was by reading a book that I enjoyed and just remembering why I read. So don't put pressure on yourself, because people say 2025, we're reading 50 books this year, we're reading 70 books this year, we're reading this number of books, we have to read. Yes, reading is important, but don't make it like a very, very strict, shocking goal. Like, I have to read, everybody's reading, they're saying this, my book club, this. No, remember why you read. Remember that you read because, I don't know why you read, but I read because I want to escape this world and go into a very much better world. And fiction just does that for me. And when I go back to reading fiction, I was able to like go to other genres.
Yes, I think that would actually work. Just trying to switch, the genre you're reading, right? Try something lighthearted. Try something that is not so bulky.
Yeah.
Maybe try something light, something small, interesting as well, right? Maybe let's say you've been trying to cover all these like big books and everything. Try fiction, right? That can actually help you, interest you, enthralls you, draws you in, and then you remember why you were actually reading. Like, try to just switch up your reading, let go of the pressure, switch up, your reading. You can try audiobooks as well, if that helps you. You can try reading a book that you really like, rereading as well, a book that you really enjoyed reading at a certain point, right? So I think that should actually help you get out of the reading slump. Shout out to Fokwe. Thank you for sending in these questions. Okay, so she said, how do you read so many books? Okay, I think for me, do you want to go first?
No, you go first. Yeah.
Okay, so I don't think I read as much books as people who actually think I do. But how do I read so many books in quotes? I think there's just a piece of interest, right? I'm actually interested in the things I'm reading. So for instance, let's say I read a fiction book and I read more of fiction, even though I'm trying to diversify and read more like self-help, leadership, and all of that, right? So I'm actually reading what I'm interested in. I'm reading interesting books. So that helps me read many books. Yeah. So that's one thing. And I think there's also the place of, of building capacity. Do you understand? So I didn't just start reading yesterday, right? So I've been reading for a long time. Like, we've been reading since like primary school. There was that, conducive environment that fostered, our reading. So there was, we're always surrounded by books, even though there were people obviously that did not like books, even when we were in primary school, right? And, same environment, different outcomes, but we've always been around books, that sort of thing. So that just helps us to read so many books.
I think I read as many books as people think that I do. And it boils down to interest, first of all. Like, I am interested in books. You know, the same way you say that, oh, like, why does someone play the guitar so much, or why does someone, you know, do something so much, why does someone read so much? I think the first thing is interest. I actually am interested in books, right? Okay. And like, reading books excites me. Like, I am actually, I'm interested, I'm excited to read a book. And then if you're that person that is not naturally inclined to reading books, like the thing you spoke about, conditioning, we were also conditioned to read books. So at home there were always books, in school there were always books, there was a library, it was important to read books. In school, like during our birthdays, they will tell you to donate a book to the library. We just grew up in this like book environment, and I would say it was a condition. If you're not inclined, if you're asking that question because you're somebody that does not get it, and you're like, how do people read so many books, and I want to read as well.
Join book clubs.
Yeah, join book clubs and hang around people that read books. Like, right. So your environment, your environment is important. Like, be in a conducive environment, friends that read, book clubs.
This question is also from Fokpe, and Fokpe wants to know if she can borrow books from me. Sure, definitely. Be my guest. You are very, very, very welcome. Okay, next question is from Joshua. What are your thoughts on reading 5 books at a time? And I think this question is because I read like 5 books at a time, even more than that, right? So it's a sort of specific question. I think it's actually like there are different things that come into play.
Reading 5 books at a time or reading multiple books at a time is something that is discouraged by people around me. For example, my mom.
Alright.
She'll be like, why are you reading this many books? How many books are you reading? Read one, take one. Right? Like when I'm going out, I like to take my books with me. She'll be like, take one book. What? Personally, this is personal. I'm not generalizing. I read multiple books at a time. I don't know how to read one book at a time because I'm learning different things. So I'm reading a fiction book. I'm reading a book about, let's say, mental health. I'm reading a book about something I'm interested in. I have many interests, and my own way of developing capacity or increasing my knowledge is by reading books rather than watching videos, you know. My point is that, how do I read many books at a time?
What are your thoughts on it?
What are my thoughts on it? I think if it works for you, go ahead.
Exactly.
If you can watch like multiple, I wanted to use watching multiple videos at a time, but it doesn't really go because you can't watch multiple videos at a time. Do you get? But then again, you're not reading the books at once, 5 books in front of you. You're reading one, you read a chapter, you go to another. I know that for some people it cannot work. Some people it can't work for some people because some people like to focus on one thing. Like there are many people that will say, I want to finish one before I go to another. So just know what works for you.
Exactly.
Just know what works for you. It works for me. It doesn't work for some of my friends, right? So if it works for you, then go ahead. If you are there's a word for it, multi-passionate. I don't remember the word, but I was reading a book about it, and there are people that just are so interested in so many things.
If it works for you, go ahead. It works for me, right? It works for me, and it's not like you said, it's not like I'm reading everything
at the same time.
Right? So, for instance, let's say I'm reading 15 Laws of Growth, right? Let's say I read a chapter, then go to another book, right? So, and I think that even helps you to, like, it helps with that whole reading slump thing because you are not fixated on one. But if it doesn't work for you, that's also fine because I've heard people say, oh, I have to focus on one at a time. Exactly. It would confuse me, and all of that. But just do what works for you, basically.
Can I add something? I think it helps in the school system where let's say you're taking 9 courses. You have to read 9 courses. It's still the same thing. You have 9 courses to study. You have to study those 9 courses. You have to, right? So you read maths, you go to English, you go to social studies, you go to whatever courses people in school do, So like
I think there's also the place of, I don't know, like capacity. Something you've done over and over again. Even Wattpad times, you'll be shifting from books, waiting for updates, that sort of thing. So it's not just something that we started yesterday. Anyways, next question is from Joshua again, and he says, what is one superpower you wish you had? Reading minds. If I could read minds. Yes, exactly. But I think that, I already have that.
Just my answer.
I think that you can actually know what, or at least have an inkling into what the person is thinking just by observing.
That was my answer.
Bro, just by observing them, studying them, that sort of thing. So yeah, reading minds. How about you?
Because she stole my answer. It's the same thing. If I could have a superpower, it would be to read people's minds, to know what they are thinking, right?
Yeah, I've always wanted. That's what I've always wanted.
Yes.
It's from Pencil Queen. I don't know who Pencil Queen is, but thank you, Pencil Queen, for sending in your questions. And Pencil Queen wants to know if there are any Christian adventure books. I don't think you know the answer to this. See,
I don't read adventure. I'm not interested in adventure. I don't read adventure. The only adventure I used to read was Famous 5. After Famous 5, I don't think, and Secret 7, and they're not necessarily Christian.
They are not Christian.
Do you get? So if you're interested in adventure, read Famous 5 and Secret 7.
Christian adventure books is what Pencil Queen asks for.
I don't know Christian adventure books.
Okay, all right. So I think a very, very beautiful. I have read a bunch of Christian adventure books, and oh my goodness, and I think that Christian adventure is sort of similar to Christian fantasy. So I think these books also fall under Christian fantasy, but they have that element of adventure, war, that sort of thing, right? And
Narnia.
I think so. Have you read it?
I tried, but it wasn't my thing.
Right. So you can also check out Chronicles of Narnia. I've not gotten into that series either. But I think I'll just leave a bunch of recommendations. But one series that was absolutely amazing and that whole adventure stuff going on, that was Mark of the Raven series. The Mark of the Raven series was a Christian adventure / fantasy series, right? So we had war going on. We had all these kingdoms.
Did you read it?
Definitely. There were 3 books in the series. Very, very wonderful series. Please check it out. I'll just leave it and you can follow it. So next question, what is your favorite book? This is also from Pencil Queen. What is your favorite book?
Not my favorite book. Okay. My favorite book right now is the one I'm reading right now.
All right.
4-Hour Week by Tim Ferriss.
Okay. So I don't also have a favorite book. I enjoy different books and I've enjoyed a lot of books that I've read.
Yeah.
Right. But I think the most recent book that I really enjoyed was Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. So yeah, that's a really interesting book you can check out. And also my Bible. My Bible is a beautiful book. So read your Bible. Anyways, next question is from Godwin. And Godwin wants to know, thank you Godwin. Godwin is an amazing person. Thank you Godwin. How are you able to manage your time with school, personal investment, chapel and all that? And that question is for me. You also went through the same thing. How were you able to manage your time with school, personal investment, chapel and all that?
When I was a student, I don't have like a clear-cut answer that this is how I did it, because there were many times I didn't know what I was doing, or many times where one aspect of my life was suffering and the other was not, and the other was doing well, like I was. Do you get? So I would say planning.
Yeah.
Having a planner helped me a lot.
Yeah.
Like the most consistent thing I did regarding time management was planning. So I remember 100 level through 400 level, I always had to have a planner, or maybe like something to just write all my activities that I have to do. That even if I will not do them, I'll still write them down and see that I have this by this time, this by this time, this by this time. 400 level was more chaotic and I wasn't really, but planning really helped. And when you plan your time, right, you know that you can't be wasting time on social media, because if you waste your time on social media or on this, there's a part of your life that will get affected. So when you like plan, I had a calendar at a point, a really huge calendar. So seeing your time, seeing your hours, seeing everything really helps, because you can see that this is chapel. So if chapel is 10 to 12, how can I maximize 8 to 10? Do you get? I guess. Like there were chapel, there's going to be rush after chapel, 12 to 1, you just let that 1 hour go, but it's like, how can I maximize that 12 to 1 instead of, do you get? Like those bits of time, you see those tiny bits of time, they are the key, because I realized that bits of time make up the time. So if you like waste those tiny bits of time, then like you waste your whole time. So I used to use those tiny bits of time to read books. I know that you did not ask about reading books, but those tiny bits of time. So we'll be in chapel is over, we're waiting for something, I'll pull out my phone, I had books on my phone, or have like a hard copy, right? Or I'm waiting for the lecturers to come, bring out my book, if I went for class, that is. Just those tiny bits of time. Yeah, and planning your time,
So planning definitely helps. Just knowing what exactly you're supposed to be doing at this particular time. It's not like I always, like follow it and I'm strict with it at times, but planning goes a long way, right? Planning maybe the day before, planning like before you go into the day before, right? It definitely goes a long way.
Planning day before, I really recommend that. Sorry, I have to say that.
It definitely goes a long way, right? don't know what I'm supposed to do, right? Or when I'm not clear about what I'm supposed to do, like I waste a lot of time.
Yeah.
So it can be in my head like, okay, I know I need to do this, but like when it's not like, okay, I've written everything down or everything is clear, that actually affects me a whole lot and I end up wasting time. Is from Bolu. Thank you, Bolu, for sending in your question. So Bolu is asking that when we're reading spiritual books, should we just read or we should go deep into it or just study a little, not that deep?
Deep how?
You get the question. Like, for instance, let's say you take a book like Breakthrough Power Vision or Wisdom That Works, any of those books by Bishop, right? And you see all these Bible verses, you see, okay, they put a scripture here. So like, should you go deeper and just explore more? Or we should just read what they have given us in the book? Do you get?
Yeah.
I think I just read what they've given us, even though I feel sometimes like I should actually like, okay, check out the scripture, but I just read what's in the book. How about you? What do you think?
For me, it depends. It depends on the time you are working with.
Okay.
And it also depends on the type of study you want to do.
Yeah.
So let's say I'm reading a book, a spiritual book. One example is Release of Power by Bishop Oyedepo. I read that book twice in 100 level. So the first time I read it, I just read it because it was there, like, let me learn this book.
Yeah.
Right? But then the second time I read it was because, like, I had an issue that I knew that the book would help me with. So I actually sat down with the book, I read the scriptures, I opened my Bible, I wrote down, prayed with the verses and all of that. So it depends, like, if you just want to learn about what you have and just learn and sit down and learn, then just do that. But if you feel like, I need to do a study on this, like I need to do the study, it depends on the circumstance, it depends. And I'll also recommend that with spiritual books, like, actually take time to maximize them. Like, they're not...
Don't just skim.
Exactly, don't just skim through. They said we should read Breakthrough Power Vision in school, so let me just read it and say that I've finished. I think it's important to, like, soak. They have verses, they have Bible verses, they are all of those things. So I think it's actually important to sit down with those books, and even if it will take you more time than usual, because you will spend time doing a study, you will read the Bible and all of those things. I think, like, even if it will take you more time, then like take the time, because you will learn a lot and it will help you grow spiritually.
All right, thank you for that. Next question. Bolu is wondering how I create time to read a lot. How do I create time to read a lot? Okay, I think we've brushed a bit on this. And how do I create time to read a lot? I think intentionality is something that people say all the time, but being intentional about it, right? And also having that interest, right? And also putting myself in environments that would help me to read. For instance, I'm in a number of book clubs, right? So that also helps me to read, right? For instance, the Godly Brains book club. Now I'm reading the book for February. I'm not done with it. Was 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth, right? And so because I know that, okay, this is the book we're reading as a book club, if I have book reviews at a particular time, that would also help me to actually read that book, right? We mentioned planning at one point in time. When I plan the day, I schedule time to read, right? So let's say it's 30 minutes or an hour. There's that block of time where, okay, I know that I'm supposed to be reading. And sometimes it's somehow, like, especially in school, where, okay, let's say, for instance, other people are reading, like, the academic books, whatever, right? And I'm reading a book, but I think it's just best to remember that, okay, this is actually an investment in yourself, an investment in your, your spiritual growth or whatever it is, right? So there's that place of scheduling time to read. There's that place of, the tiny bits of time you referred to, right? So in those tiny bits of time, let's say, okay, you are waiting on a line in the cafeteria, for instance, or you're waiting for a friend, right? Or you're walking on the road, right? Just seizing this tiny bit of time to actually read. So this is actually how I create time to read a lot. It's not really far-fetched. How about you?
Yeah, similar to what you said. For example, if there's a book that is so good, like, it's so interesting, it's so intriguing, like, and I know that reading this book is, like, it's so interesting, like, this is such a good book. Personally, I know that I will not even need to schedule any time. I will use all the time, all the pockets of time that I have. I will read, whether I'm in the sun, in the rain, I'm walking to my hostel, I'll open the book and be reading because it's so interesting, right? But then when we have normal books, it's harder to, take out time and say I will be intentional with reading this book every day. And you just need to find this, because if, like I said, if a book is so good, you will find all the time, even if there was no time. Even when your lecturer is teaching, like knowing myself, I'll just open my phone and be reading. So this also helped me in my final year when everything, like I said, was so many responsibilities. So there are times when you don't even really have pockets of time, or you want to use your pocket of time to sleep or rest because you are so tired, you're working on this, you're working on that. So having a schedule, minutes a day, between 10 and 10:15, I'll read one chapter, and you've done your this thing. Like before I sleep, let's say you sleep by 10 p.m, 9:50 to 10 p.m, I'll read for 10 minutes. Like 10 minutes a day will not hurt you. It's not too small, because 10 minutes a day, 7 days a week, that's already 70 minutes. That's 1 hour 10 minutes, and 1 hour 10 minutes is better than 0 minutes. So like, don't feel the pressure. I think many times, like something I learned from Atomic Habits, we feel the pressure. Oh, I have to read this book, but break it down. Do you get like, if a book has 50 chapters, you will not do 50 chapters in one day. Like take it step by step. If it's one chapter a day you do, and it will take you 2 months, it's better than pressuring yourself to do 50 chapters and not ending up with anything.
Setting goals helps me as well, right? Setting goals, breaking it down. Like for instance, 50 chapters. Like this is something I do a lot, even when reading the Bible. So I divide it into, okay, like let's say this particular book has 24 chapters. So I break it down, okay, and I know that, okay, I'll read 3 books every day. Sorry, 3 chapters every day, so I can finish this book in 8 days, that sort of thing. So just setting goals, breaking it down into the simplest form, right? That really goes a long way, and it really helps me a lot. All right, next question is from Rachel. And Rachel, thank you, Rachel. Rachel wants to know how I do so well with reading books and studying in school. And this is an interesting assumption.
Very, very interesting.
It's an interesting question, and it's an assumption as well, because how do you know I do so well with studying in school? Anyways, God is helping us, right? So, you want to go first? I think that you go first, but I think that both of them complement each other, sort of. Right, and there's also that place of building capacity. So it's something you've done over and over again. So it has become a part of you.
And then I also have a different experience. But this story came to my mind by 300 level, second semester. I think it was second semester. I had done first semester, and I saw that my result was good. I was like, okay, second semester came. And then I remember that I wasn't really reading for school anymore. I just dropped my school books. And I would spend the whole day reading books on my laptop, like non-school related books. Do you get? Like I would read across different genres. It wasn't even fiction. Most of it was self-help. I was trying to like learn about relationships, learn about leadership. I was reading John Maxwell. I was reading like, those self-help books, because I really wanted to learn about different areas of my life. And I didn't even know why. I just dropped my school books. I'm not saying this is what you should do. And then one day in chapel, I heard somebody say the same thing.
Yeah, because I've been reading, like I've been juggling both of them since like for the longest time.
Learn what they taught you in class, and I would learn. So it was like learning. Someone was saying that this is something that I do. Like this is something he does, that he doesn't read. Like it's a normal practice for him. So he doesn't read school books. But when exams are, like he doesn't read his school books. Like he reads fiction and non-fiction, like he's always reading. And then when exam comes, like a week or 2 before exams, he starts hitting his books. And I just felt like, oh my god, somebody like me. I think that reading books actually complements, like you said, because when you're reading, you are getting knowledge. Do you get? It may not be directly related to what this is not a method for everybody. Like I don't recommend it. There are some courses that you should not even try this with. Like my sister, she has to read like every day, right?
Okay. I hear you.
My friends would see what I was doing and be like, what are you doing? Because they could not do it. It's not for everybody. It depends. So I would say that when I used to read those self-help books, it sharpened my brain in a way that, like, I was used to reading. Like, I was always reading. So when it came to reading my school books, it wasn't a struggle, right? It was just read the book and learn. Just reading school books or reading any book is learning. And one thing that reading books did for me was it helped me learn faster and helped me learn better. So when it came like to school books, it was like, okay, you get exactly. What was even the question again?
How do you do so well with both reading books and studying in school?
Yeah, so I used that example to like give a phase in my life. There was a time in 400 level where I did not read books at all. It was school books.
Mm.
It was my final year. I had to work on my project, especially my project period. Like, it was my project back to back. I didn't even think of books, scheduling, nothing.
Yeah.
So there are structures that can help you be, consistent. But there are phases in your life where there's an aspect that would soar, and there's an aspect that will
go
be.
down.
Do you get?
Yeah.
So you need to develop a working system, and also understand that times and seasons are different.
Actually.
There are some periods that will require you to just go into a reading frenzy with books, and there's a period of your life where you have to hit your school books.
I have similar experiences, right? So, for instance, my first year in university, right? My first year, for some reason, my reading went down. Reading of non-school books, it really went down, and that was unusual. So the summer after that was when I read, I went into reading. I read a lot of books that summer and everything, and even more recently, January, right? There were exams, there were all of that. So I did not read fiction. I read during the break before school resumed, but after that, I did not read. I didn't read any fiction book at all, So January was only one fiction book I read, and during the exam period, and that's unusual. Is it only fiction books I review?
No, she does non-fiction. You reviewed Atomic Habits, I guess.
Yeah, good.
Oh, power of imagination, power of vision, think big. Okay. She has reviewed some non-fiction books as well.
Yes. I don't review just fiction books. There are also some non-fiction books that I've reviewed, and you can check them out. Thank you. Alright, Favor's next question is, apart from my obvious love for books, is there anything that spurred me to open this YouTube channel? I opened this channel, right, because there was a need, right? Because one thing that is rampant, or something that I realized, or something that is even obvious, is that, not everybody is reading
the right books.
Yes, right. Not everybody's reading the right books. There are people that, and this is something we also spend time doing, consuming content that was not necessarily helpful, not necessarily edifying. The bad boy did this stuff, right? And there are people that are still stuck in that, they are still stuck in that space, right? So the channel was just created in order to point people towards, enriching books, right? An enriching selection of books, to recommend books, right? Because maybe people read, for instance, The Bad Boy Took Me to the Market, whatever the topic or title is, right? Because they don't have access to better books, right? And we're not saying, read only non-fiction books. No, right? There are fiction books that are actually that are defined. There are fiction books that do not have spice from cover to cover. There are fiction books that are actually good, right? That so this channel was just created to point people to that sort of books, right? To those selection of books, right? It was just created in order to also review books from a Christian worldview, right? And actually determine whether, are these books we should spend our time on? Are these books we should invest valuable time on? Because say time is life, or whatever.
The unit of life.
Yeah, what she said, right? So just that sort of thing, right? Just to help people see that, they're actually better books. Recommend these books to reduce the friction between people and the next book they're going to read.
I believe, from what you just said, and I just remembered university, and a lot of my friends and acquaintances and all of that, there is such a leverage on books that I believe that the enemy is using to get into the hearts of people. So I think the first time I noticed was 100 level, because I used to read books that were not edifying when I was in primary school, secondary school. I wasn't saved and all of that, right? So I got to 100 level. I had a friend, so she showed me her library one time, and I went to the library, and all the books there were sexual books, this and that. And I realized that there are so many people over the years I've seen that they love books, right? And instead of that love for books to be a channel for positivity and do you get, the enemy is using that love for books, actually they are reading things that are not helping them. And the more you read the wrong things, your mind becomes corrupted and your life becomes corrupted, and your heart is the entrance to your life. So books are a gate into your mindset, they are a gate into your behavior. So I think that this channel is doing something really important and showing us that there's they're all genres of books that they are not necessarily Bible Christian. There's historical fiction, there's fantasy, there's this, there's that. Christian books are amazing, right? Love that. But then there are also genres that they are not written by Christians, but they are also edifying. Do you get my point?
I get you. And I think there's also the place of just being conscious of certain themes, right? So let's say, for instance, we read these books, right? Let's say, for instance, a recent one was Mechanics of the Enogwa, right? Just being really, really, really conscious of the things that are being projected in this book. So let's say, for instance, we see, for one thing I pointed out in the review was that, okay, these people use humor, they use sex in order to cope with the daily challenges of life. So when we come across things like that, when we come across, ideologies like that, we know, the right thing. Do you understand? We know that, okay, there's actually a better way. I don't know if you get it, right? Just being really, 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 really conscious. Mention of, books being a pathway to our heart, right? Even the Bible emphasizes that, guard your heart with all diligence, right? And that's one of the things that, this channel is really, really particular about. Guard your heart with all diligence, because from it flows, the issues of life. So it is what we actually take inside that will affect what flows out of us, right? So the words you even speak, obviously, you've been listening to music, you've been listening to this sort of music. With time, that sort of language will come out of you. You've been interacting with these things in books, you've been interacting with them in, the movies you watch, right? It just becomes a part of you and it flows out of you, right? So this channel just wants to encourage people to be really conscious, right? So we're not just carelessly consuming, right? We're not just carelessly consuming books, right? But even when you read these books, okay, they are written by non-Christian, that's okay, right? Read many good books, right? Read books, right? There are people that have written amazing books. They are not necessarily Christian, right? Just being really conscious of these things that are being projected, right? And just being really mindful that, okay, how can I actually apply this? So it's not just about reading, right? Because we can do a whole lot of reading, and what is the point at the end of the day if you're not going to apply these things?
You said about carelessly consuming is so important. Not carelessly consuming, rather, as children of God, as believers. It's important that when you're reading a book that is not totally in line with your values, you have to be very watchful. So let's say you're reading romance, you want to read a romance book, and you see that this book is so interesting, but then you now see things of premarital sex, cohabiting, this and that. You're not reading to say, this is right, this is what you're doing, I should do this. No, you're reading it with the understanding that these are not my values, right? This is not what I should do. What you're doing is wrong, is separate from my values. And also we have to be intentional with the books that we pick. Do you get? Sometimes I think sometimes it happens to us that we're like, this book has the wrong things, but I'm bigger than this, I've grown past this stage, and I can't be affected by this. For example, like a romance book that has smut, that has all of those things, and you're like, I can't read it, nothing will happen to me. But then you have to be very intentional about saying that I won't read these books because, like we said before, they're an entrance. So when you're reading romance, when you're reading sexual stuff, witchcraft, all of those things, you have to be very careful, because you can say that these things don't affect me, but you are taking them in.
How do you build or develop a consistent reading habits? This is from Naomi. I think we brushed on this. So basically we'll just reiterate a bit of things we said, just being intentional, carving out time in your schedule, maybe daily, maybe weekly, right? Putting yourself in an environment that helps you to read, right? Joining book clubs, right? Actually, start with what you're interested in and work up to, more difficult stuff, that sort of thing, right? Setting achievable small goals, right? Okay, 1 chapter every day, 2 chapters every day, that sort of thing. Creating time in your daily plan. So you're setting aside 15 minutes, like you said, or 30 minutes, whatever. Start small, right? You don't have to read 10 books in a month. Start small, right?
Add something. I'm just going to add that. Like she said, start with what excites you. Don't read because everybody's reading fantasy. Let me read fantasy. I remember trying to read fantasy because my friends liked it, my sister liked it. I read the fantasy, I didn't like it, I didn't enjoy it. I was like, what's this fantasy about? And it's okay, there are people that enjoy it, right? Don't read something because this is what is in vogue, unless it's something that is very helpful. What excites you? Is it fiction? Is it thriller? Is it history? Is it romance? Start with actually what excites you. Do you understand? And that's something I got from the 4-hour work weeks. Tim Ferriss asked, what excites you? Do that. Do you get? So what excites you? Read that, and then work your way up to.
How do you create time for your YouTube channel, school, relationship with God, social and personal life? Ari also asked that, how do you juggle having time to do the videos with your normal school life and your duties in school? How do I create time for my YouTube channel, school, relationship with God, social and personal life? Planning, right? Planning helps. Planning goes a long way. Planning ahead goes a long way, especially with the YouTube channel, right? Planning ahead. So I know, okay, this is what I want to release next week. Just planning, right? Planning ahead. Even with school, planning, relationship with God. Do I do planning, Sha? I think everything boils down to my planning, right? And God helps me with everything. Because the second aspect was, do you ever feel like you need to compensate in one of those areas? I think one thing we also mentioned was the fact that you know, sometimes some things have to take a step back, right? So just also knowing that, okay, exams are coming, let me focus on exams, let the YouTube channel take a back seat, right? Or exams are coming, let me reduce the amount of time I spend going out, going for activities. Is how do you juggle having time to do the videos with your normal school life and duties? So one thing that really helps me with the videos is creating in batches, right? So I don't like creating a lot of content ahead of time, right? So for instance, school is resuming in a bit, so let's say I already have videos for the first 1 month of school's resumption. So when school resumes and everything, I don't have to start rushing like, okay, and I know that, okay, I want to post 1 video every week. So just creating in batches, creating in bulk, right? Creating in bulk just helps me and just releases or reduces that tension, that sort of thing. So that really helps me with my normal school life and everything. Just planning ahead. I already, have the ideas down, have the videos down to upload, so I'm just uploading, and there's an option on YouTube that allows you to
schedule.
Yes, so the content just goes, so I don't even I can schedule next week's content like today, and so I don't have to really that sort of thing. So all those things just help me. It really helps me, and God helps me as well. God helps me. Do you have any book recommendations on anxiety, patience, waiting on God, and trusting in His plans for
all of those things, or one book on each? For anxiety, I remember a book that I read in 100 Level by Greg Laurie. The name is Anxiety, Fear, and Worry. He talked about that and it really helped me. He addressed those 3 things, like differentiated between what fear, worry, and anxiety is and how to deal with them. So you can check that. The next thing she said is
patience.
I don't know any book on patience. Waiting on God. Do you? I think maybe How to Hear from God by Joyce Meyer.
Okay.
Maybe that. The Bible.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. Obviously, all this anxiety, patience, waiting on God, trusting in His plans for you. I think the first book recommendation, the first book I would recommend is the Bible, right? Because the Bible deals with all these things. And I think another book that I think probably helps with this anxiety and patience, I think is Living Beyond Your Emotions. I think that's by Joyce Meyer. That's your question. Thank you, Naomi, for sending in your question. You read so much books. You've already just a brief summary. How do you read so much books? Genuine interest, reading what you want to, reading what you're actually interested in. Starting small and building capacity, just working your way up. And intentionally having time every day, taking advantages of those pockets of time, right? And what else? Just being intentional, scheduling it right into your into your day, right? Putting yourself in environments that encourage you to read. So
you can even have reminders on your phone.
Definitely.
Your wallpaper to read if you're not inclined.
Definitely.
Read a chapter, read this, read that.
So that's something that I had at one point in time. At 8 p.m., just ask me, okay, have you read this book? Right, so that would at least jog your memory. Oh, I'm actually supposed to be reading this. Okay, next question is also from Tega. What sparked your love for books and what sustains it?
Good question.
Environment, conditioning.
Yeah, we talked about something like this.
Yeah.
What sparked my love for
community?
Books? Yes, what sparked my love for books is the thing we talked about before. We grew up in a house where there were books everywhere. The primary school we went to had a reading culture, an amazing library. There
was time during the week to go and stay in the
library.
Oh my God,
yes. Every week, every class had a time to go to the library for about an hour, and we would just read books. I think that's one of the best things you can do to a child. expose them early to books.
Yeah, and I think that question that was about, okay, how do you're studying in school and reading books, I think they allowed it to actually overlap. So it was not like they were not separate from each other. So you were having your normal English, maths, and then library.
Exactly.
Right? So that sort of thing.
So I think that was what sparked it. And then
what sustains it?
What sustains it? Intention. What sustains my love for books? Wow. I think, first of all, the spark has never died.
Okay.
I'm a lover of books.
Okay.
You know, the same way, like we said before, somebody loves to play guitar, somebody loves to, work on cars, somebody loves, do you get?
Okay.
Everybody has what they love. For me, it's books.
Okay.
Like, books are my escape from this world. I get ideas from books. They make my imagination wider. If I want to travel with no money, I can read a book and I'm in another world. Like, reading is my passion, it's my hobby. And I remember that I used to say, like, when I was younger, that I want my job, not anymore, but like, I want my job to be something that has to do with reading books. Like, can I get paid to read books? Because it's just, I don't know, I think it's like a giving passion.
Sustains my love for books or my love for reading. What sustains it? I don't think I have an answer.
Exactly.
What sustains it? I don't. What sustains it? The right books, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't actually think I have an answer for that. Yeah. So like you already said, what sparked my love? The same thing. The environment. Always having access to books, right? Interesting books and everything. The environment, having access to the books, and the community, right? So always been around people that would, that were all over books, like on Wattpad, right? So there were people that loved reading as well. There was just a community of people, right? There were, people would say, okay, read my book, that sort of thing. So there was just that flow, right? And even being there, I think it sort of sustained, at least in that period. So I think that's just that. The last question is from Favor, and Favor is asking, why do we need to read?
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of rich and successful people that don't read, so why do we need to read? I have a video where I go into a bunch of benefits I've derived from reading over the years, so you can definitely check that out. I think I'll just add the link and everything. And I think another question or another thing we can consider with this question is that there are a lot of rich people, there are a lot of successful people that have credited reading, that have said that, oh, reading has helped me get to where I am. Reading has really helped me. Reading has helped me in my journey. So why don't we actually consider that? Or something that is also important is that you should just always be taking in, right? Be taking in, have something that is helping you get better at whatever it is you're doing or at life generally, right? And if that is books, if books would help you get better, if books would help you grow, then why not take advantage of it, right? So what would you say to that?
And before I go to what I want to say, like you said, these successful people also have their way of getting in information. So they may not necessarily be reading books, but then they are listening to podcasts, they're learning from videos, mentors, they're watching videos. So books are like a source of information, right? And these successful people that you see, they are learning from something. They have their, sources of information. I'll say 3 things. Number 1, nobody is reading a book, or I don't think that the purpose of reading books is to be rich and successful. Like, I know that there are books about being rich and successful, but the core of reading books is not to be rich and successful. Do you get? Like, when people read, they are reading to get knowledge, to be more intellectually and mentally engaged, and to get wiser, to communicate better, to learn new words. I can list 20 reasons to read that don't even have anything to do with being successful or being rich and successful. There's something about books, right? Books have the power to address a knowledge gap that you have in your life. So look at people that are rich and successful. Oprah Winfrey, let me use Oprah Winfrey for example. She does not have knowledge on all the areas of life. Do you get? So she can have a lot of money in her account, she's successful and everything, but then she will still have wisdom gaps or knowledge gaps in her life. And reading is one way that you can address those wisdom gaps. When I say wisdom gaps, I mean that, so let's list 10 areas of life. Let's say relationships, finances, communication, academics, health, investing. What else is there? Media, like all these areas of your life. Nobody is, no matter how rich and successful you are, you're not perfect in all these 10 areas. You get, nobody knows everything. That's why we go to school. That's why we read books. And books are an avenue for you to learn from people that have mastered what you want to know. So let's say you're struggling in, like, I want to be a better friend, I want to be better in my relationships. Look for somebody that you like. Reading books does this thing where there's somebody that has mastered it, the person has studied it, the person is an expert, the person writes a book. You that has the knowledge gap, you read it and you also become more proficient. And even when it comes to money, for example, let's use money because you said rich and successful people. You read a book by a finance expert that is very rich, very successful and all of that. Let's say as a person, I don't know about investment, I don't know about how to invest, to save, stocks, bonds, and all of that. When I read this book by this finance person, it does not mean that I automatically will get rich, because you're not going to get rich if you read and you don't take action. Wealth comes from action, from value. So, but what reading books will do to me is that it will give me the knowledge that I need to take the action to be rich. Do you get? I don't have to make mistakes that the person made because I've learned from mistakes. There was a book I read, reading. The person said we don't have to learn from our own experience. That experience is the best teacher, but it doesn't have to be our own experience. We can learn from other people's experiences. So if Jeff Bezos writes a book about wealth, he will address the mistakes he made. He will say some things. So the journey may have taken Jeff Bezos maybe 20 years, but I'm reading from his wealth of knowledge, and it can take me 10 years. Or do you understand my point? They don't make you wealthy. It's your action that will actually make you wealthy. Actually. But when you read those books, you get knowledge. So the second thing I said was address a wisdom gap in your life.
So reading doesn't make you rich and successful.
And then rich people have a way of getting knowledge. And when we look at the richest people in the world, they're not even the standard for success. But when you look at rich people, they have their ways of getting in information. Do you understand? Jeff Bezos, like we said, he reads books. Gates, he said he reads a book every week. He has a yearly book list. Like Oprah Winfrey reads books. So when we look at success, like success is different for everybody, right? But everybody that is successful has a way of getting knowledge. It may not be books. It may be a podcast that you're learning from. You can learn from podcasts. You can learn from mentors that have read books and are teaching you. Your teachers, they've read, they are teaching you. So you're reading indirectly.
Actually,
you get my point?
Indirectly.
Yes.
So that's a wrap. Thank God. We've treated all the questions. So thank you guys so much for watching. Hope we answered all your questions. And if you have any more questions, please drop them in the comment section. We'll be looking at every single one of them, going through them and everything. I also got a bunch of suggestions for the YouTube channel, from vlogs to having more guests on the channel, doing collaborations with other readers. Definitely expect that in the coming year. The people that said, have collaborations, I'm definitely, just watch out, guys. Another person suggested a book club, and all of that. All those things will be taken into consideration, and just watch out. And if you have any more suggestions, you can definitely drop them in the comment section. And thank you guys for watching till the end. Once again, my name is Tomisi, and this is
Sayo,
and this is Faithfully Booked. So thank you guys so much.
Bye. Mwah.